I have 3 points I wanted to make before asking a question. And they don't really have anything to do with, per se, environmental issues or health and safety issues. There are others in this room who will be dealing with those matters much more intelligently than I could. Rather, I want to address the issue of democracy and self-governance as it pertains to this issue. The first point has to do with, I have found this whole concern to be highly problematic, as it has been defined mostly as a state problem, as a state issue. Ever since this House Bill 278 was passed in 2004, the decision-making about whether drilling should occur at a community level was taken out of the community's hands and transferred to the state, to a bureaucracy. And it was done, as has been the case often throughout our country's history, when people at a local level stand up and use their democratic muscles and express their concern. Companies, particularly when those concerns call for controlling what a company can or cannot do, companies react. And what they do is they run. They try to escape democratic control and run to the next level up. So in this case, they go from the local level to the state level. And that's what the industry did. And with the help of some compliant public officials, some of which I think are from this county, they were able to get this bill passed. It moved decision-making from your hands to the hands of the state. So that's point one. I think that this whole process and the whole framework in which the decision-making for permitting and the like is left in the hands of a regulatory agency is fundamentally and profoundly illegitimate. Second, and I think this connects to the first, is the regulatory agency in question. Ohio Department of Natural Resources, with all due respect to these fine folks here, the leadership anyway, I think, is compromised. The leadership is very political, and the leadership is not impartial or neutral. The current director, in fact, recently appointed under the governor, quote, spent most of his career in the oil and gas industry, working with American Electric Power Corporation, working with Bechtel Industries Corporation, specializing in oil and gas ventures. This is, as they say, the proverbial fox guarding the henhouse. The permitting happens almost routinely. How many permits have been denied? Regulatory, think for a moment what that means. A regulatory agency isn't in the business of prohibiting anything, but regulating something. Yet, if that activity has some profound problems, as many people do believe hydraulic fracking does, the best that can happen is to regulate the harms, to regulate the abuse, to regulate the damage, to regulate the pollution, to regulate the lack of safety, health, and welfare in the community. Not to prohibit, because that's not what they're in the business of doing. In fact, there is an economic incentive to permit. The more permits that are given, the agency makes more money. So that, to me, isn't a prescription for neutrality, or isn't a prescription for objectivity, or isn't a prescription for looking out for the best interests of the community, but self-interest, working hand-in-hand with industry. This agency, with all due respect to these fine chaps here, has been captured, I believe, by industry. And the third point, I think we need, as a society, to respect, to honor, and to trust people at the local level. None of these people live in these communities that, at least in Plain Township and other communities around here, that are going to be subject to hydraulic fracking. None of the people in industry who are from out of state, whether it's Chesapeake or whomever, live in the communities. None of them are going to potentially have to accept the consequences of the decision. Liberty is fine, freedom is fine, so long as there's responsibility and accountability. And if you don't live in the community, it's easy to just give a good housekeeping stamp of approval. So these three issues, I think, profoundly support the notion that ultimately it is the right of communities to decide. It is for you and your elected representatives to make that fundamental decision and not regulators and certainly not industry.
Thank you for your comments, Greg.